One thing I know is that people have probably been paying attention to my social media. They're probably thinking to themselves like, what made this guy get into real estate? He's changing his diet. Like, what's going on? Especially with the real estate thing. And I'm talking about the people who actually know me and they actually been around me. Because, this is probably totally left field from what they would have expected me to get into, which I agree. So, in this video, that's what I'm here to explain. This is not a pitch of some sort. I'm not going to be breaking down, you know, the specifics when it comes to real estate, but I'm going to explain my mindset and, why my mind went in the direction to get into real estate. For me to explain all of this, I would have to take it back about 3.5 to 4 years, maybe. Since I didn't have a job, I just downloaded the Uber Eats app and, I started getting to it. But the only difference is that I was doing it on a pedal bike. And the funny part is everybody around me, they had like motor scooters, they had even motorcycles, some of them. And, they had these little, even I seen some people on the little hover wheels. Or they had a battery on their bike. But me, it was just straight these legs. I had a pedal bike. So while everybody, they had that little extra energy, I was just strictly raw, using these legs. Rain, sleet, and snow. Didn't matter, grinding it out. Because like I said, I'm a hustler. I'm a grinder, regardless, because I never wanted to be, you know, like just completely broke as a grown man. So I'd rather go through the struggle than to just, be a bum. And that's just how I am. But at the same time, it kind of gave me like this grit and this dedication to, always, finish the job, get the job done. Don't always take the easy route. And I think that's what that year and a half taught me. Because, I did it for probably about a year and a half straight. You know how they say about A Boogie? He was walking with his Timbs on, walking through puddles full of pain. When I was on a pedal bike riding through puddles full of pain. It was nasty. But I don't regret it. Because it took me to go through that to appreciate achieving something that wasn't easy to attain. That's what that taught me. You start to learn that just because something ain't easy doesn't mean that the task doesn't have to be done, because they really do have to still get done. But I had to come to, terms with myself that that shit wasn't really like sustainable. I couldn't just keep on riding on this bike door to door, damn near killing myself for pennies because the pay was trash. So I was busting my ass doing all of this for trash pay. But it beats a blank. Would I do it again? Probably not, unless I had no other choice. Once I realized that this wasn't sustainable and I couldn't live like this anymore, I don't know what flicked the switch, but something told me to, just go and get your security license. So I remember getting on my bike, going to do Ubers, trying to make up some money so I could save up so I can pay for my security license. I ended up saving about, $400. I remember I did that. I'm like, okay, now I got enough money to get my license. But then I ended up finding out about this back to work program, which I joined that, and they paid for everything. So I didn't have to pay for nothing when it came to my security license. Nothing at all. So the money that I did save up, it really just became more of like, survival money, things for like car fare, you know, lunch. So I had a pretty penny for when I actually did start working. But, and it's back to work program. I had to go do my 8 hour and my 16 hours on Zoom meetings, and since they was paying for everything, it was a 3 week program. I had to do Monday through Friday through Zoom. Usually anybody else, if you pay out of pocket and you do it yourself, getting your security license is not going to take that long. You're not going to have to go on a 3 week program. And I really had to, get up, go on Zoom, for like 3 weeks. And then even after the school, I still had to wait for my license to actually get put into the system. So I don't know like what's the motto of what anybody else, but I had to go through this way because one, I didn't have a GED or diploma. So the people in the back to work program, they referred me to this program because they didn't look for things like that. They didn't that wasn't a requirement for their program. So I remember I took that route. I went to the little online classes, I knocked them out, and then, I remember I finished the whole process, and now it was time for me to start looking for jobs. So I'm calling all of these places looking for jobs. I land an interview. I remember I get to the interview and I ended up running into my homegirl, that I knew for years from my old neighborhood. And she was there with my interviewer. So the interviewer was like, "Yo, you know him?" She's like, "Yeah, he's from my neighborhood." But being that I knew her, and the interviewer knew her, I basically had the whole interview in the bag, you know. Like it was like God was on my side. This was luck. But the messed up part about it was that once he put my information in and started looking up my license, my license wasn't even in the system yet. So, even though I would have had the job, I couldn't work because my license wasn't active. And I remember it took, even after that situation, my license didn't pop up in the system for about another 2 months. But thank God, when I did call the company back and I explained to them who I was, they still put me to work immediately. They remembered me. And once I started working in security, this is where my mind started shifting because now I'm doing security in a bunch of different corporate buildings. I'm in this corporate building, I'm in that corporate building, I'm meeting, maintenance people, I'm meeting property managers, I'm meeting building managers, I'm meeting building owners. For me, I'm meeting contractors, and I'm building relationships with these people. So I started understanding what running a building consists of from the internal side, and that's what sparked the light bulb. I said, okay, being that I work in corporate buildings and I understand how these buildings are ran, maybe I could get into real estate so I could learn the external part and the contracts, of what it takes to even get a building in contract. So I figured, okay, if I was to get into real estate or commercial real estate, I would probably be more of value because I already understand how the internal parts of it will go. Not knowing that once I did get into real estate, it was going to open up a whole totally different lane. It was way different than I expected. Certain things that I knew did overlap, but more I learned way more new stuff than anything. Way more. But at the time, my mind, my goal was, okay, I know how the buildings operate. I can probably become a property manager, or commercial real estate. But after I started actually studying for the real estate exam, then I started seeing there's way more to real estate than I thought it was. You can be a property manager. You can work with sellers. You can work with buyers. You can work with distressed sellers. You can work with people going through divorce. You can target. There's so many. You can be an appraiser. There's just so many different lanes in real estate that I didn't even know existed, that once I started reading and learning the lingo and understanding the contracts, it led me to a place to where I was like, you know what? I think I want to work with distressed homeowners because they're going through a tough situation. And me, I came up in a tough situation. So I can relate to these people more than the average person would. And I'm a good dude. Anybody who knows me, if they will be like, Manny's a slime ball, Drift is, well, whatever you know me by, you might know me as Drift, Manny, Scooter, whatever you know me by. There's nobody that's gonna, is gonna describe me as a slime ball. They're gonna be like, nah, he's a good stand up dude. Anybody. And if you're gonna be working with people in distressed homes, I believe you need people like me that's going to do the right thing and not just be worrying about the profit. Because the profit is gonna come when you're doing God's work at the end of the day. And the sad case is that most of the people that's in these hardship situations, they don't even understand that they have options, or they're too afraid to have those conversations. And them being too afraid to have those conversations, by the time they get the courage and they be like, okay, I'm ready to talk about it, a lot of the times it's too late. Their home is already about to get up for auction, when they could have spoke to somebody who could have probably, got them back on their feet, or aimed them in a direction to where they can buy some time, or even get their home, back by, modifying a loan or something. Because you can make the best out of a bad situation. You can leave the situation with messed up credit, or you can leave with good credit. But you have to know the knowledge, and there is not enough people in the real estate circle that actually focuses on distressed homeowners, because a lot of people feel like it's too complicated, there's too much going on, so they really stay away from it. They really stay away from that. When in reality, we need more professionals focusing on that circumference of people. There's so much of a lack that most people going through, like pre-foreclosures and things like that, they just lose everything when they definitely have options. So I'm just going to make sure it's my duty, to learn everything I need to know, so I can be, the best advisor in those situations, so I can help as much people as possible. And then in the long run, I can even teach people how to do what I'm doing, so more people are in a space to where they're able to give the knowledge to these people, so they can leave their messed up situations with some type of dignity. So if you want to know why did I choose to get into real estate, it started off me working, in security, becoming a fire and life safety director through security, which showed me, you know, what building operations is, how to, what I have to know about protecting a building, and what to do in emergency situations. That drawed me to commercial real estate. But then when I actually did the work and started reading, I understood there was other lanes that's necessary that could help people in residential homes. And there's a lack of professionals focusing on that atmosphere. So why not that person be me? And why not focus a lot of my attention getting better in that focus field so that I'm able to become a professional and I'm able to teach other people to do what I'm doing. So right now, I'm in a learning process. And that's just what it is. That's the exact reason why I got it in a real estate and why I chose this hardship avenue. And going forward, I just, my aim is to get better at this and become the best advisor in hardship situations that I could possibly become. Well, that wraps up this story. That's everything I had to say. I hope I didn't waste too much of your time. Everyone have a blessed day. Manny SharQ. Peace.